Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show where we meet real people in crypto, people who are involved with some of the hottest projects out there, and regular people like yourselves. We want to hear your stories, so if you are interested in being on the show, don't forget to contact us through social media or email me directly, ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚@amund.com. Welcome to the 10th episode of the Inside Crypto podcast. This episode was recorded on September 29th, 2021. Today we are joined by John Wingate, the CEO and founder of BankSocial. Just the name itself sounds interesting, right? Well, they are a blockchain company seeking to disrupt the traditional banking and finance industry. From peer-to-peer lending to regular banking services, they are hoping to do it all and so much more. We talk about John's intriguing journey through the crypto universe, how the company came into existence, and the impact of regulation on the industry in the United States. Thanks again, everyone, for listening and liking the podcast and leaving those reviews. That is really appreciated. Don't forget to tune in next week where we talk to some more people who are involved in crypto. Regular people, exciting people, who knows? Hello, all you crypto-loving people. Welcome back to the 10th episode of our Inside Crypto podcast. It's Korean as usual, and today I'm lucky to be joined by our first actual Outside the Moon guest, John Wingate. He's the CEO of a peer-to-peer lending company, BankSocial. Today we're going to go into exactly what P2P lending is. For those of you like myself who are not too clear on the subject, we'll also talk about the company, where it is going, and some other things on the roadmap. Before we don't forget to head over to the company I work for's website, ℚ𝕦𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚. You can read about our products, DFI and DMX there. You can also buy tokens there. If you have any feedback, don't forget to reach out to me at Korean, CRIN, @ℚ𝕚𝕚𝕚𝕚, because it's just John today, so he can spend as much time as he wants talking about himself. So John, tell us about yourself, besides being from Dallas.
I'm not one that likes to talk about myself too much, so I'll keep it brief. I'm basically a technologist, serial entrepreneur who fell in love with blockchain technologies very shortly after Bitcoin was birthed into the world. And I've been playing in the crypto space ever since. Basically, have always thought that there's a real need for a shift to a more open financial system, and have recently started our own project, like you said, BankSocial, which fills a gap that we find is currently missing in the transition from what I call traditional Web 2 systems to the new open Web 3 systems. That's a little bit about me. I'm sure we'll learn a little bit more as we go along.
Definitely. So you said you've been in the space for a while, since Bitcoin was birthed. What propelled you into the space? Was it just you feeling the need for finance to change, or?
So what originally got me into the space was I used to manage a bunch of developers out for a company called Speed. At the time it was called Speed FC, then it changed to Speed Commerce. But they one of the lead developers one day came to me and said, "Hey, there's something there's really cool that I want to tell you about. It's called Bitcoin." And I just looked at it and I had this eye-opening moment. I said, "Wow." And I started evangelizing to all my friends. Some listened, some didn't. And at the end of the day, what I ended up seeing was a trustless way for people to store value into a system that couldn't be easily manipulated by outside forces once it got to a certain level. But I didn't stop there. I started playing with mining. My first transaction, you might find this funny. My first transaction was on the dark web, because that was really the only way to get it back in 2010. If you didn't mine it, you got it on the dark web from people, or if you didn't know miners. So my first transaction was just went to Western Union, sent some guy $20, $35 actually. And I sent him my wallet address, and he sent me, like some stupid, ridiculous number, like 100,000 Bitcoins. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
It was very early on. Bitcoin wasn't even at a penny yet. It was at like 1/3000th of a cent. So it was very early on, and I evangelized to all my friends. They didn't really pick up on the concept, a few of them, but I will admit that I started doing mining. I would spin up Google servers at night when they were free, when you could still mine on CPU. And I would spin those up for free at night through APIs, and then I would spin them down when they weren't free anymore. And so after I played around with that for a long time, I really felt like there was a hindrance to the future of how this money could play around at that time with Bitcoin. And it's why I'm not a real Bitcoin maxi. It didn't give you what now Ethereum and these smart contract systems give you, which is a built-in way to tie specific performance to the financial transaction. And not just specific performance, but even with our BankSocial token, we have several innovative features within the token that allow us to do things that you would never be able to do with a traditional bank and traditional money and traditional finance. That's what really got me excited back about blockchain was Ethereum in 2015, and started writing Solidity contracts, started doing all that kind of stuff. And then it wasn't until I took a break in 2018 when the crash started happening, because you just started seeing everybody get into the space just to make a quick buck. And you had the ICO crash, which I equate to like, 2000, year 2000, 1999 with the internet crash. And then you're now having this renaissance of what the space will really be like. I think we're starting to see the initial phases of what the space will truly become in the future. And so I got back involved when my mom called me about 9 months ago, and said, "Hey, I'm going to buy some Dogecoin. Should I buy it?" And I said, okay, now the everyman is getting involved. And when the everyman gets involved, that's typically when you don't want to wait too much longer, because the space is about to be taken over. If you look historically at what happened with the internet, what happened with apps, those are the types of things that were catalysts to large growth and large expansion. And so we looked at what is really missing in the space. And right now, what you have is two types of systems. And most of them have been started by software developers, not a lot of business experience, very smart people. And they've started these ecosystems, I call them. And the problem with them is you have two different kinds. You've got the people who want to be truly decentralized, but I think that for the most part is going to be a challenge with most users, because most users want to feel that inherently we want to feel a trust factor. And it's hard to fully trust just code, especially when you hear about some of these hacks that have occurred, or how some of these chains can get taken over, the smaller ones with 51%. There's just so many little things. And then there's things that we don't know about yet. So we looked at the space and we said there's a need to bridge the Web 2 world to the Web 3 world. And it has to be something that's built on the blockchain, but it has to be something that also provides security and trust and inherent understanding to the people who are just your normal retail Chase Bank business user, business owner, somebody who has a couple bank accounts. And that's why we created BankSocial.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for that. You just perfectly segued into everything. So tell us about BankSocial, because bank and social, fairly explanatory. And I've seen lots of stuff on your website about social capitalism, block score. We're going to get into all of that later. I love the idea of bridging Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. And you mentioned that a really cool term as well, the everyman getting into it. My mom asked me a similar question when I started working in cryptocurrencies. Should I buy some Bitcoin? I'm like, that is definitely something for a longer conversation. Take it, start wherever you want to start. I love the Telegram group you guys have, and I love the way the website is structured, especially the roadmap with all the checks and stuff. And it's so organized, so easy for average people to understand how.
We're actually launching our brand new website, which is a complete shift to... You'll have to come back and check it out. I don't want to give too much away, but thank you for all that. We are launching a new website today. Again, the intention, the vision is to be a bridge from the existing system that's a pyramid style system to the new financial system, which is more of a distributed star system where everybody has connectivity to everybody, like how the plexus works, where one node can have connections to many nodes, and many nodes can have connections to many nodes, versus there's a CEO and they have to justify making $500 million a year. So they have 10,000 locations and you have to go into those locations. We wanted to disrupt that We wanted to get the unbanked banked. We wanted to get the underbanked banked. And we wanted to allow people around the world to serve each other instead of to serving organizations and corporations. So social capitalism, I coined that term when I was running or helping to run another token. And we used to have daily AMAs. And I just came up with it one day where I said the future, because capitalism is not a bad thing. The bad thing about unfeathered capitalism, where people can just make it whatever they want, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing either. The system is built the way the system is, but it's time for the system to undergo an evolution. I don't think any of what we do necessarily is inherently bad, but it turns out that when you allow these systems to go unchecked, and when you have these systems that allow people to mold them into what they want, certain things win and certain things lose. And we feel like social capitalism, a system where everybody benefits versus a system where just the top few people benefit, is a much more, it's something that we would naturally tend to flow to, as opposed to being forced into it. I make this analogy all the time. The current banking system, or it's not really an analogy, but the current banking system is, its only value proposition is that you put money in and it's safe. That's the value proposition. Blockchain fixes that with a few lines of code. It's not very complex stuff. We feel like the old system, while it doesn't necessarily have to go away, we feel like we can live alongside and certainly supplant some of the existing frameworks for financial modeling, financial economy, with this social capitalistic model of, you still use capitalism to incentivize and reward the benefactors of the system, but you don't use it in a strictly crony capitalistic way where just a few people basically saying, hey, you want your money to be safe, bring it over here to our bank and get out of here now. Because, I laugh about this all the time. People don't know, when you go deposit your money in the bank and you sign an agreement, you're not just putting your money in a bank. You're giving them your money. Okay. Legally, they have your money. It's theirs, and they have an IOU to you. So they're allowed, when you sign that contract, they're allowed to do whatever they want with it. And that's fine. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But for me, if I'm putting 10,000 or 15,000 or 100,000 or 2,000, doesn't matter. If I'm putting that in there, why shouldn't I get the benefit of what you do with that money? Some of it. I don't need all of it. I don't need, if I put $2,000 in, I don't want 50% of your margin for the next 8 years. But why don't I get some of the benefit of those systems? And if I don't get some of the benefit, why are the people at the top the ones who seem like they're getting all the benefit? And I'm not a conspiracist. I'm not all this. I think that these people worked hard for their money and they deserved it. And they were taught this, and that's what they know, and that's what they gravitate towards. And people use the system. It's not a bad thing I'm talking about here. I'm talking about an evolution where now we have a way to do it differently. Now we have a way to do it where we don't have to keep these antiquated systems in place. And that's what's exciting for us. And that's what we're doing at BankSocial.
That is supremely exciting. You said a lot of really key, exciting terms for me, especially unbanked, the banked. So we just met each other. I live in Taiwan, but I'm originally from South Africa. And everything that's been happening there, there's like 30% unemployment, and banking is a big issue there. How does BankSocial propose to address the issue of people not having bank accounts and banking?
You see what's happening in places like El Salvador, where just the inclusion of Bitcoin into the governmental system, into the government economy, has enabled so many more people to be able to do so much more. I was seeing some stuff about how people who used to have to drive an hour, get on a bus and drive an hour to go make a payment because that was their only option, can now do it with Bitcoin from their house, from their phone. Most of the people in the world right now have a phone. And I can tell you that it would be a lot easier as a policy of the world to put a phone in every person's hand. Elon Musk is already doing things like the SpaceX. Starlink. Yeah, Starlink. So he's already doing Starlink. So to get a phone in everybody's hand is not that big of a deal. Phones can actually be simple phones can actually be manufactured very cheap, and you can get those into a lot of people's hands. To put banks on every corner in South Africa, that's a lot tougher. The infrastructure there is significantly, and you have the factor of protecting it. You have the factor of getting money in and out of it. It's just not a feasible system. With BankSocial, for example, we can put a phone in everybody's hands, or anybody who has a phone, which you'd be surprised how much of the world actually has some semblance of a smartphone that they could do basic transactions on from wherever they are. And whether or not you have an internet connection, there are ways to handle with technology all of these different permutations of a financial transaction. And so when you start looking at it at its core, the goal is really to, if I'm in America and somebody in Africa needs to borrow, why can't they borrow from me if I'm willing to do it and they're willing to pay me back? Or if somebody in the Philippines wants to take a loan from somebody in Russia, or give a loan to somebody in Russia, or transact with somebody all around the world in a trustless, quick, and seamless way that they don't have to know they're on blockchain. That's another thing here too, is that a lot of the systems right now, when you use them, you're on blockchain because of how complex it is to use it. We have to, as the crypto community in general, we have to focus on user experience more than anything. Because the technology, I can tell you right now, the technology is simple. It's simple. I feel like there's a lot of competition between X protocol and Y protocol to say why their protocol is better. I'll tell you both right now that probably both of their protocols are so simple that they were written by 19 and 20 and 15 and 17-year-olds. They're simple, but that's not a bad thing either. That's great. That's why we love blockchain, because it's so simple. And so what we need to start focusing on is the user experience, because if somebody's got to go make pancakes and then pour syrup on them and use their fork to get a wallet, they're going to be lost. And my mom and your mom and whoever else comes down the road that's not computer savvy is not going to want to participate in that system. Because then think about, now they've put $1,000, and now think about how frustrated and panicked they're going to get when they try to take it out and they have to do the same thing in reverse. So we have to focus on user experience. That should be the paramount focus of anybody who's in the blockchain. And the reason why is we want people to inherently feel like there's no difference between the things they're used to, the Web 2.0, and this new Web 3.0 world. That's very critical.
And I totally agree with you. You mentioned a lot of good points about cell phones. And even here, one of the first things, I've lived in town for 13 years. And one of the most interesting things I found is like somebody who takes out the trash for people, who comes along in the trash car here in town. And those guys don't make a lot of money, but even those guys that had, my local trash guy, he got his hand on an iPhone 13 before most of my neighbors. And cell phones are such an important part. And I definitely agree with you that the convenience, especially because South Africa is a huge country. It takes, just like America is, right? It takes 12 hours to drive from my home city all the way to the bottom of South Africa. Actually, no, that's longer than that. It's more than that. But definitely cell phones could make a difference. And like you said, I totally agree with the user experience, because I've done stuff in crypto. And one of the other days I think Polkadot is a fantastic project, but when I was trying to stake Polkadot and installing Polkadot.js and then trying to move stuff from this, and the language on the UI is just terrible. And I think I lost 1.5 Polkadot because I did something the wrong way. And I think that just, it sucks. And it's irritating, and it makes me just not want to do something. And so coming back to BankSocial again, how do you guys plan to make things easier? What is your plan? Or is there a plan at the moment?
Yeah. So the first thing is, we have to, just in general, I'm just talking in general terms. I don't want to go into too much about how we're going to do this, because it is so novel that I don't want to.
Of course. No.
In general terms, the goal is to obfuscate the blockchain away from people. They love knowing that they're free and they're not tied to any top-down organizational existing ecosystem, but they don't really care to know what their wallet address is for the vast majority of people. Like, They'd probably want to see it, but they don't want to have to copy, paste it, check it. Did I put in the right address? Things like this need to be obfuscated for the end user. Okay. In addition, it needs to be made seamless. You shouldn't have to go through 6 or 7 steps to bring fiat into, or that's the other thing is I say it sometimes too, but that's the technologist in me. I hear people using these different terms. To somebody who's like my mom or your mom, it's money, right? It's all money.
Exactly.
And so when we tell them that you get tokens and that you get this and you get that, their first inclination is, this is not money. So I'm putting money into not money, and am I going to get money back? And try explaining that one to your mom. Okay. I've tried. It doesn't work very easily. So what they need to understand is at the end of the day, you're dealing with a system of financial tools that allow you to move value around. That's it. And it needs to be simple to the point to where they don't ever question if that's what's happening. And if you look at the systems right now, just take a simple transaction of buying a token on Uniswap or on some exchange, any exchange. The process is one that would make you question again if you are really dealing with money after you take what you consider money, your credit card or your dollars that are in your bank account, and you move them into a token. And so that has to go away. Of course, that people can still buy tokens. That process needs to be simplified. I think there are some exchanges that are doing a good job of simplifying that process, but we're still very far away from it being end-to-end, seamless end-to-end solution. And that's what we're excited about at BankSocial. And the how we're going to do that really embodies at its core the simplicity and the removal of process and steps to provide a system, equate it to, if you look at how computers were in the late 70s and early 80s, computers were great tools built by very smart people that were all technologists, but they just weren't marketed. They just weren't marketed well. And so it took companies coming along that put inherently more simple tools layered around the complex logic boards and the complex systems before the every people started to say, okay, now I can get into this. I can believe in this. And until we do that, we're going to be stuck in this position of just having a bunch of technologists utilizing blockchain. And that's not going to get us to the next phase. The next phase is mass adoption. And to get to the next phase of mass adoption, we have to wrap these sexy experiences around blockchain. People shouldn't really have to know that they're utilizing blockchain to utilize blockchain.
No, I 100% agree with everything you said. Since here, I started mining in 2017 and I got into crypto, and then Asian people in general are very conservative when it comes to money and spending and investing. And people are like, are you sure you want to do that? You might lose your money. I still kept on going. But I think in 2021, lots of people have come into me like, I want to get into crypto. I want to buy this. I want to do that. And I've explained the steps to people. I'm 38, turning 39. I have former students of mine who are in their 20s who have money. They come from money. They're like, I want to spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 on this. How do I do it? And I explain the steps. They're like, no, sorry, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. So I can't wait for that sort of sexy, seamless experience that allows people, regular people, to say, I want to make good use of my money. I want to circle back and go talk about what I saw was the BlockScore social credit scoring system. I used to live in Massachusetts before, many years ago, and the credit score is really important. In BlockSocial, what is a social credit score?
The website you're seeing now is really just a small piece of what the overall ecosystem would look like for BankSocial.
Oh, okay.
I think you can, when you hear the word BankSocial, it probably elicits a lot more thought than just what you're seeing on the website. So the new website will do a significantly better job of demonstrating and displaying the total vision, or a vast majority of the vision. There's still some pieces that we haven't added to the website. We just got a patent filed yesterday, so we're patent pending on a few technologies.
Oh, congratulations.
one of the first, and thank you, we'll be one of the first in the blockchain space to do. But at the end of the day, specifically here on the block score, what that is it's a technology wrapper that aggregates data from, depending on where you are in the world and what your KYC looks like. It wraps a bunch of the local and universal credit scoring metrics into an NFT mint that you can take around with you and then utilize at other places. So the vision there is that there would be other communities, other protocols that would accept the block score NFT token that was a trustless, sovereign, trusted, encrypted key that you could say, here's my credit score. And you could, my social credit score, and it's built on the blockchain, and it's immutable in the blockchain. And when you do that, you pass that along, and then whatever third party uses that, they don't have to. One of the problems with the current systems, my background is in technology and building omni-channel retail, business to consumer ecosystems using every product you could think of, from Oracle to SAP to WM to just every product you could think of that operates in that space. I've probably touched it, and both from a developer standpoint and a management, how to tie them all together, how people use them in the warehouse, in the stores, in the back end offices, and what it comes down to is that when you're most susceptible to data breach, the more entry points you have to data. And so if you look at how Experian.com works right now, it's great. Everybody ties into Experian who does a credit check, and they take your data at all these entry points, millions of entry points. They send it across a secured, and then there's an API sitting on the other side waiting for data to come from company X and company Y and company Z. And so that endpoint, that data endpoint, is severely compromised because it's talking to so many different, and that's why you have these breaches. The same thing with banks. You got to minimize the entry points and minimize the reasoning for them. So if we can mint an NFT that expires in 3 months or 6 months or whatever that time frame is for expiration, and then that's trustless. It's trusted, but it's trustless, and it's sovereign. More importantly, your data is not out there floating around everywhere. It's just a key back to your data that says that as a trusted source, being BlockScore and BankSocial, you now have a verified stamp of your BlockScore that can be used wherever BlockScore is accepted. So that's the idea behind specifically Block.
That's such a fantastic idea. In the modern day and age, people are worried. Even here in South Africa, bank hacks happen, physical entry into banks and people stealing stuff happens, and information. So I love the idea of putting that stuff on an NFT, and it's really cool. A question for me: can people outside of the US use BankSocial, or how do you use BankSocials?
We're actually not marketing our services to the United States. So our services are marketed to most of the rest of the world, and not just the United States. Not the United States at all. There are a few other countries that we don't market our services to, but for the most part, the entire world. We're about to come out with a couple different products, one being a payment gateway, both for businesses, websites, a lot of different things. And I hear a lot of companies that I talk to them, they want me to consult for them, and they tell me how they're going to do it. And I just shake my head. I just say, you guys have no idea how blockchain works. You cannot do payment transactions like that, but it's okay. It's just, somebody has to bring it to market. And so we're starting off with payment gateway, payment services. Very quickly, we'll move into banking type of services, checking accounts, debit, credit cards, things of that nature. The goal is fully functioning financial platform that would encompass everything you would traditionally need to have just to be able to operate anywhere in the world, borderless.
Nice. As a consumer, there's nothing for me to use on BankSocial just yet until we get down to the bank services level.
Yeah, at the moment we have the token does provide some accesses to a few new features that we're launching here in the next couple weeks. The token right now, it's really part of the future ecosystem. and there will be many use cases for the token in the ecosystem. But again, we're trying to keep those somewhat under wraps because a couple of those are patented or patent pending items that we just can't discuss right now.
Oh, of course, no problem. For people who are interested, where could they purchase said token or get involved with it?
So you could check it out, BankSocial.io. We're on several exchanges. They're all on the website. You can also come to our Telegram chat, t.me/BankSocial. And we've got Twitter, we've got Facebook. We're active on all those. So any one of those we can be reached out to as well. And that's all on our website, BankSocial.io.
Oh, very cool. I'm looking forward to it. It's been on my list. I have a list of crypto stuff to buy, and BankSocial has been on there. I just haven't had time to stick my security key in my USB port and make purchases.
We look forward to having you on board.
Oh, I pop into you guys' Telegram all the time, and it's so active and very interesting.
Our community loves it. They really love it. So we love it. That's what keeps us going, is the community.
Oh, definitely. I totally understand. So you're not offering services in America. This sort of bridges to, I don't want to keep you too long because it is a working day, I imagine. Regulation in the States has been on the news all the time. Even here, they translate it to Chinese here. Mm-hmm. Is that something you're worried about because you're not offering services in America? Is that something do you have to worry about because you are doing stuff outside of the States?
You always have to worry about regulation. So it's always something that we focus on to make sure that we're adhering to regulation as much as possible. The thing that I'll say about the United States is that we have to have a set of members in the government that are focused on first understanding. I think a lot of times, not just governments, but just as humans, we tend to act first and think later. We tend to think we really know what we're talking about for the fear of people thinking that we don't know what we're talking about. And I think that has to change because blockchain is such a radically different concept that if you don't understand it, I can guarantee that you're going to make the wrong. You might be lucky. You might be the lucky 1 in a million that doesn't make a wrong move. But if you don't understand the technology in the current space, especially when you're trying to regulate it, I'm not just talking about going and buying a token. I'm talking trying to regulate and write laws that are going to be in books forever that will probably never, ever change. You need to know what the technology is. And I would just encourage, if anybody listens and hears one thing that comes out of this, your goal with everything should always be to learn as much as you can about it. If you're just buying a token, I'm not talking about you. If your goal is to create a platform or to regulate something or to get involved with something, then you need to know what you're getting involved with. So that's what I'll say about the current regulatory state in the United States. And the sad thing about it is that America is going to fall behind because I can guarantee you that the rest of the world is using this. And I think that one of the things that is being looked past by a lot of senators and a lot of Congress people is that when right now the petrodollar and the dollar is so powerful because it's controlled by the US government and they can control the supply, they can control where it goes, they can control a lot of aspects of it. You've lost that ability with blockchain. The only way to now control it is to shut the internet off. And if that happens, we have a bunch of other problems that I don't even want to.
Me neither.
If 70% of the world gets together and says, you know what, we're using blockchain, that's going to put the United States at a significant disadvantage. And I think that they need to really take a world leadership role in embracing blockchain and allowing the innovation to flourish at just like with every evolution. You have some winners that it's going to happen either way. You can delay it, you can push it down the road, but it's going to happen. Maybe it doesn't happen in a year or two, but in 5 to 10 years, it's going to happen. And so do you want to be at the forefront in the leadership role of the world saying we're still the innovative powerhouse of the world? Or do you want to say, no, we prefer to have the top 10 banking institutions keep all the money, and then in 5 years, they're not worth anything? They just got to make a decision. And I think a lot of other countries understand this. Even it's funny, but I think that China understands it more than probably every other country. And while they're maybe taking a strong arm approach to how they take a stance on it externally, I think internally there's a much different conversation going on. And some of this may just be market manipulation to keep prices low to acquire as much. I mean, you saw what happened with the Ever deal that happened. People pretty much liquidated a lot of crypto to probably cash out of positions in either markets or other markets that they were probably over leveraged on. So I think there is a big push by these governments. But the unfortunate thing in the United States is that a lot of our Congress people are career politicians, attorneys, and technology is not a real big focus in school in the United States, whereas in the most of the rest of the world, technology has become a forefront learning curriculum in most early educational systems around the world. And so I think that's a big thing that needs to shift. A paradigm shift needs to happen in the United States. We need to embrace technologies. We need to make that it's just like we don't teach financial literacy in the United States. Is there a reason behind that? I'm not going to speculate there either. I'm sure we could talk about that for a long time, but that's how I feel about the United States right now.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, very interesting take and very good point about China and the rest of the world. Taiwan, we're pretty close, so we get to hear things from the mainland as well. In your home state of Texas, I mean, that's always also been on the news here, is that they say, oh, if you're leaving China, bring your Bitcoin mining machines to Texas. Do you think Texas will separate itself from the rest of the other states and say, hey, we're a crypto-friendly state, please move your companies, your operations here?
They have. I'm part of something called the Texas Blockchain Council.
Oh, cool.
And it's been started by a gentleman named Lee Batchelor, and he's great. He's a ex-attorney, actually a professor, a law professor, and he gave up he gave that up to fight for crypto in Texas and really the United States at large. And Texas has made significant advances relative to other states. I would say that it's probably as good a state as any in the United States to be involved with crypto in. I still think we have a long way to go. But the good thing about conservative values is that they tend to not want to overregulate. They tend to want to say, you know what, if it's going to flourish, let's just get out of the way of it. Let's create some rules that keep people from ripping people off, but let's tend to, be conservative in how much we regulate it versus it's odd that you would think the conservatives would want to regulate the crap out of something because they're conservative. They don't want, they want everything to stay the same, but it's entirely the opposite. The liberals want to, and I'm not going to go too much into politics. So I don't want to do that because I'm really not a conservative versus a liberal person, but you do see that in Texas because of, I do think that the conservative aspect plays a role in that because traditionally here in Texas, there's less regulation from the people in power, which in this state just happen to be conservative. I think it's very promising. I'm excited about being part of the Texas Blockchain Council. I'm actually going to a meetup this week or Friday. And it's a great time to be in blockchain. And I think it's a great time for the world in general. I think we're seeing for the first time ever, you said something, and this is when social capitalism really, struck home and why I really started using the term a lot is for the first time ever in the world, you're from South Africa, you're from Taiwan, you're from here, you're from there. Right now, when a war happens, I care about my livelihood because I buy my bread across the street. I do my banking here. I don't know anybody anywhere else. Just subconsciously, psychologically, I don't have a tie around the world. And I think that's a bad thing. I think it's great that we have local cultures. It's great that we have local communities. I'm not saying that. But if we look at what happened in Afghanistan, the people who had crypto in Afghanistan were the only free people in the whole country. Why? Because the country decided to take its money. The owner of the leader of that country took all the money and left, and nobody had any money. And even if he had stayed, would their money have, look at what happens in Africa all day. The financial systems people don't M-Pesa is used exclusively in Africa because their money is so bad. It fluctuates worse than crypto does. And so when I look at how I see future status of the world, I think that when you have an economy, let's just take BankSocial, that's worldwide, and you have a Telegram group and you have Discord groups and you have community and people participate in that community. When half of your community or 90% of your community is around the world, you don't want anything to happen to them. And so this concept of borderless communities really is embedded in what the crypto financial world is all about. And I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of this politically, and our society is going to drastically change because of it. I don't think a lot of people are seeing this aspect, but it really is there, and it's going to happen whether we like it or not. We're going to become closer to a one world type of economy and a one world culture, even though we'll still have our own localized cultures from the perspective. Money, finance, the underpinnings of everything we do, unfortunately and fortunately, is based on this idea that when I do something and I create value for myself, I can then take that value and trade it and exchange it with anybody. And right. And that circle has gotten bigger. That concentric circle has gotten bigger at every, evolutionary step that the human race has taken. It used to be just in your little, wherever you could ride your horse to in one day. And then it became wherever you could take your wagon to in a month. And then it became wherever you could drive or take a train to in a couple days. And that circle just keeps getting one way, it keeps getting concentrically larger, and the other way it keeps getting concentrically smaller, right? Like the time aspect of it gets smaller and the size aspect of it gets bigger. And we're in a very interesting time in the history of humanity, because I think for the first time ever, the time aspect is going to be at the smallest. It's always like this, but I think it's going to be at the smallest that it will be able to get on a single planetary level. And maybe when we become a type 2 civilization or even a type 1 civilization. Are you familiar with Michio Kaku's, or I don't even think he's the one who came up with it, but he talks about it all the time, the 4 civilizations, type 0, 1, 2, 3.
No, I've never heard of that. What's a quick breakdown of that?
A quick breakdown of that is a type 0 civilization is a civilization that's single planetary based, uses resources on its planet, whether that's carbon or whatever, that to create energy. A type 1 is a multi-planetary species. A type 2 is one that survives off a star, gets its energy off a star. And then a type 3 is one that is multi-galactal. And so I think that we're really talking, of course, and Elon is trying to get us to that type 1 type of civilization, and I applaud and commend him for that. But as a type 0, I think we're going to be at the smallest we will be once crypto really goes mainstream and the financial aspect of our world is fundamentally changed, because it's a huge overarching hand that takes and moves pieces around where it wants. And once we remove that hand, then we really have the ability to start behaving more as innate humans in our natural state.
Definitely more cohesive, more together.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. I love the ending of that. Okay, John, I don't want to keep you too long. Is there anything else you want to end off today's podcast with? Anything, any message, anything you want to plug about BankSocial or yourself? Or
Nope, I don't like plugging. I don't like our work. We feel like will speak for itself. So I don't really want to plug that. My goal with going out and talking is to give people the confidence in the future, give people the belief and the faith that there are people that really care about how the world evolves and how it evolves to a system that is more inclusive and takes into consideration every single human around the world, as opposed to just a select few who by, no doing of their own were born into a situation that was more beneficial versus less beneficial to somebody else. And that's really my goal for doing this stuff here, is to help people understand that there are people out there who understand this and who care about it and who are passionate about it, who are working on it.
Definitely. And That is such a, I don't want to sound ingenious, but it's really a noble goal. And I've lived in a few countries and traveled to quite a few countries. And there are lots of places in the world that really need help and nobody is helping them. And of course, people need food, water, and that stuff. But banking is definitely a step in the right direction for stabilizing certain countries or pretty much a lot of places around the world. And John, I really want to thank you for taking time, especially because
My
I made the
pleasure.
mistake of thinking it was only 12 hours between you and me.
No, that's no problem. It's my pleasure. I
All
love
right.
talking about this stuff.
Thank you very much for being on. And I hope I get to chat to you again in the future. And we'll definitely catch up at some point later on.
All right. Thank you. All the love and all the power. Have a fantastic day.
Yeah, you too. Take care, John.
Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye. That's all we have time for today, folks. I and everyone at ℚ𝕦 really appreciate you stopping by. Please don't forget to follow us on social media. Twitter at ℚ𝕦, AMUN, Telegram at ℚ𝕦tokens, or stop by Discord and join in the conversation. We are also on Reddit at r/ℚ𝕦tokens. Please don't forget to leave us a review on your podcast app. This really helps boost availability in different regions. It also boosts us up the rankings, so when people search for Inside Crypto, they're going to see us. As to everything we've talked about in the show, you will find the links in the podcast show notes. If you don't know where those are, on your podcast app, there'll be a little bit arrow. You can click on that arrow and you'll be able to see what I wrote. You'll be able to see all the links, the news stories, our Twitter and Discord and Telegram channel, and you can just come and stop by. And please do stop by our Telegram and Discord channel. Somebody is always there because people in ℚ𝕦 are from different regions, and we love to talk, we love to chat, and we'd love to see you there and become a part of our community, because community and crypto go together. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.